in the form of a venue that would see jazz musicians have a place they can call home, be it because they had a platform to express their deepest passion or a joint where they could simply enjoy live music they can relate to. Now, the Orbit was the birth of fresh air, and 2 years on, the venue has proven to be more than just a place for jazz, booze and food, having launched albums, careers and bringing respected stars from all walks of life in all corners of the country and different parts of the world to one stage. Now, joining us this morning to discuss the 2 years of the Orbit has actually done for jazz music here at home is the venue owner and partner, Aymeric Peguillan, jazz reviewer, critic and broadcaster, Brenda Sisane, and of course, jazz musician, Steve Dyer. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for coming to Morning Live.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming. Now, for some may know, some may not know, but maybe just take us through how the Orbit came to be.
Well, there was a time in the 90s where Joburg had lots of jazz clubs, and then gradually a number of them disappeared or moved, and so there was another time after that where there was like very few places for jazz musicians to actually perform, and then so we looked at it in early 2012, and we said let's put something together, and so after lots of consultation with musicians, with media people, with people in the arts, we thought, let's try to put a very democratic place in the center of town where we could have we showcase all the talents that South Africa has to offer, and there's a huge generation of new musicians and also obviously established musicians that were really eager to come and perform at the Orbit, and so 2 years on, it's been going, and with a great support from that musicians community, great support from media, great support from the public, from the audience, because I think the audience was really craving great live music. We're still there, and we're really happy.
All right. Now, he mentioned something about the fact that, before the Orbit was open, many places had closed down and there were not many platforms. But how would you maybe describe the general, live jazz circuit before the Orbit came to be?
Do you know, without undermining the initiatives of other venues, there was generally places where you could go to. I think Nikki's kept it alive for a while. I think Steve Dyer came and brought some young energy into the fold. So by the time the Orbit found its grounding, there were young musicians, they were hungry, and they all came together and started sort of engaging with one another, if anything, So new products are being introduced, and I think Steve would agree with me that the Younger Legion, they come together with the established musicians, and there's a new language being formed, which is really exciting for jazz in South Africa at large, should I say. So it's very exciting at the moment. There's new voices. People are not afraid of it. Has become almost like an adventure stage, an experimental stage. So it's open for that. So it's exciting. You see the mixture of various genres of comedy coming in and all of that. So it's pretty cool time at the moment. It's a really good time, I think.
All right, now Steve, let's move on to you, an artist, and you know how it is to make a living, out of music. But let's talk about what a venue like the Orbit has meant for you as a musician.
The Orbit has allowed people to explore. So let's say as an artist you want to be creative, and then you think, okay, where's the outlet for all of this? And the great thing about the Orbit is that you go to Aymeric and you say, look, Aymeric, I have this idea, this concept, and maybe we'd like to do it with 2 pianos, or we'd like to do an AV, and that he says, sure, let's go for it. So I think there's that spirit of innovation within the venue itself. And so, as a musician, jazz is always a loaded word, and I think that more accurately it's just an expression. It's unquantifiable, the kind of value that the Orbit has for established musicians, as well as this new breed of young, beautiful, inventive South Africans and people from further afield. It's fantastic.
All right, now let's talk about, I'm mentioning this again, but the fact that, so many places have closed down, but then how do you intend to maintain your business structure to ensure that the Orbit, is a place that has longevity?
Well, this is the big challenge, actually, and you need to combine different kinds of revenues. Obviously, the music has to be at the center. The identity of the place needs to stay the same, because otherwise, if you start to disperse yourself, you lose in your identity. But you need to combine this obviously with food, with some drinks, but also with innovative projects, and we've been starting doing live streaming as well, and we hope that this is going to give us the basis, the financial muscle, to continue exploring new things, because they are something that attract better crowds than others, and you need to cover all this cost, and this venue is obviously quite a costly exercise. So you need to vary, but you cannot renegade on the artistic concept. I think that's the most important thing. You need to stay true to your vision, and you need to stay true to yourself, because otherwise people will not recognize the venue and will walk away. So I think at the heart of everything, it's this dialogue that makes it important between musicians, between media, so that we always place the artist at the heart of the concept. And I think if we do that, and if we remain consistent, we'll find other sources of revenue. So I think that's the recipe we're trying to apply.
All right, we're going to have to pause there, but we will be back after the break to talk a bit more about this. Now, after the break, we continue our discussion with Aymeric, Brenda, and Steve to talk about 2 years of the Orbit live music and bistro. So do stay tuned for that right after the break.
News Today takes an in-depth look on news locally, continentally, and globally. We bring the world to your home. We cover all economy news extensively to keep you informed. We are live to break news as and when they happen across the world. We analyze news using experts in all aspects. Make a date with News Today every Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
A very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to a higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon, you're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon only on the SABC News channel.
A warm welcome back to Morning Live, where before the break, we started a discussion about the Orbit Live Jazz and Bistro, which is based in Braamfontein, Johannesburg, and it's the city's premier live jazz venue. The Orbit turns 2 and has become an icon in its own right for a lot of reasons. Key among them is how they've revived the live jazz scene, which only seemed to depend on major events and festivals before 2014. With us in studio is owner and partner Aymeric, jazz reviewer, critic, and broadcaster Brenda, as well as musician Steve. So, the Orbit is celebrating 2 years. It must have been a very exciting week. Take us through, some of the events that took place this week.
Yeah, we started on Tuesday. We wanted this year, to make it a whole week event, and so we started on Tuesday with some beautiful vocal jazz, Africa Pella and Titi Luzipo. And on Wednesday, 2 young artists who really made a mark last year on the jazz scene, Tandin Tuli, a great pianist, and Benjamin Jepta, a bass player from Cape Town, who's now established in Joburg and who's recorded a remarkable album last year. And then Thursday was Nomfundo Kaluva with the New School Sextet. And then last night, Bro Steve was there with his quartet, and Sibongile Kumalo was there with Huhadi, and we had Siyama Kuzeni, Standard Bank Young Jazz Artist 2016. And then we're continuing today with also Virum Kizwana, Marcus Wyatt with his trio, and Steve Son Bokani, and finishing with Herbie Tsoeli, and tomorrow African Kize, Nduduzo Makatini, and Fea Faku. So it's going to be a magical feast.
Quite an array of great musicians right there. So now, Brenda, let's maybe talk about the transformation that has taken place and some of the careers maybe that the Orbit has launched since it has been established.
Well, I mean, he just talked about some of the musicians that have had the, the confidence to record, having seen themselves on a stage like that, where they've seen other international artists and they've seen other established artists that have performed there, so they feel that they are worthy of that, and that gives them great confidence. We've seen albums that have been nominated coming out of there, and they've seen albums being launched. People have now, open enough to put an album out, so that is very exciting. But I think beyond that, and I'd like to throw this open to the rest of the sector, be it tourism, the supporting sectors around the arts, that, the Orbit has created it. There's been articles in Time magazine and all those international journals. Tourists, when they come here, they already know that they'd like to go to this place. How else do we sustain it? One of the days when Aymeric and them were launching, we were talking about the fact that the stage, as he says, is the order of the day, and let's give it as much attention as we can. The stage is king. But how do you sustain paying all those salaries every day? And it's now up to us as a sector to then turn around and find innovative ways of doing it. We can't over and over again go on and say, yes, it's a nice club, and walk away from it. It needs to be sustained, So I think that's where the next challenge comes from. But over and above that, I think it's a great place for artists to launch their careers, for the technical teams, for people to find their footing as creatives in the city.
Of course, yes. Now, speaking of artists, Steve, you've performed all over the world, but let's talk about what you think sets this specific venue apart from, the other stages that you've performed at.
Well, I think it's just the warmth of South Africa. You get a lot of visitors that come here, and they feel that there's a different energy around here. So you really feel at home in the Orbit. I feel that other places in the world, it can be a well-organized and structured show, but there's something about the Orbit that maintains the kind of society, the values of Ubuntu, the way that people respect each other. But other than that, what's different in this venue is that you have sound check, you have the management taking care about the quality of what is going out. And so I agree with Brenda, is that if we are trying to elevate the performance side to a world-class level, and something very unique that we give the world that is nowhere else. So if we are doing that, then we need buy-in from other people. We can come and say we'd like to initiate a project, and we can do it at the Orbit, but with some extra backing in terms of sponsorship, etc. This is something that's ongoing and sustainable. It's not a once-off. And what I've found with a lot of music before is that you'd get this huge budget and have a big, massive festival, and then it's been there, done that. But this is sustained week in, week out. And in terms of just the growth of musical innovation, it's that's what is needed, and the great thing is that it's sustainable and it's ongoing.
Talking about innovation, I mean, just to learn that the Association of Jazz Educators is convening, and they can't do it without a place like Joburg as a living example of what they're talking about, the importance of jazz education and how it transforms the sector continuously. And for me, a place that makes musicians move from other parts of the country to come and converge in this place where it's like a cauldron is already a success rate, if anything.
You know, the Orbit caters to mostly a lot of jazz. Would you say you've managed to maybe attract the younger crowd? Because jazz tends to be, you know, a genre of music that attracts the older generation. Do you guys think that you've managed to maybe attract the younger crowd?
Well, there is a lot of excitement, I think, in the younger generation because there are young musicians who perform on the stage. And you've got about 30% of our gigs were with musicians under the age of 25. Okay. And all this new generation, the ones we were mentioning earlier, you know, they're all very young and they're extremely brave and they produce beautiful music. And I think that's the great momentum that we have at the moment. You've got young musicians, talented, who are writing amazing music, recording it, performing it, touring, organizing themselves, very clued up in terms of how to market themselves as well. I mean, Mlangeni is a case in point, you know, was produced that beautiful album recently with Amandla Freedom Ensemble and was really, you know, left a mark on the jazz scene. And so we attract also a young audience by having some what we call beyond jazz bands coming. The Brother Moves On came, BCUC came, you know. So we try also to open our doors on occasions. You know, we want to stay true to our identity and really promote jazz first and foremost, because we think that South African jazz is a voice. You know, it's a really recognizable voice internationally, and we really want to be also a platform for export of that music. You know, it's very important.
Now, the Orbit has been open for 2 years, and you've obviously done a lot. You've hosted a lot of artists, but what would you say, you know, are some of the biggest achievements that you've had since opening?
Ambassador, please.
I think you know, what I like about we were mentioning the fact that the professionalism of all of it. The sound is good, the service, you know, the staffing, the menu, the selections, everything up to the music is quality. You'd like to go out, take your family, your guests, your business conversations out there. For the musicians, it's a place where they can explore themselves. That is a great achievement, and the continuous availability of the venue to do that is a great success, I think.
Now, Steve, you launched your album at the Orbit. How has the response been?
Well, that was a while ago. I'm thinking of the next one here, and then I'll be contacting Orbit in terms of the launch of that. Yes, look, album launches are a way to build interest around what you're doing currently. But like I said, it's an ongoing thing. So creative people, often when you've put out an album, you have material for the next one. So I just think in terms, whether it's an album launch or whether it's artists coming from wherever, there's no point that I've gone to Orbit and I've thought, oh gosh, you know, this is so boring. That's the thing. And I must commend also the management, Aymeric in particular, in terms of curating. It's not just putting on a show, but he would say, right, how can we shape it? Like this case in point is this birthday bash. 2 years, I think it's very well curated, and in terms of the lineup, you could go there from Tuesday to Sunday, and there's just such a wealth of diversity. And coming back to your question about youth, you get more and more youth getting interested in this music. And that's why I hesitate often to say jazz, because if you ask the musicians, they'll say, look, it's not about jazz, it's about music, and it's being about fresh, improvised. But there's still elements that come in from other genres of music, and that's what makes it so special too.
All right, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop it right there. I'd love to chat some more, but thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Now, speaking to us about Joburg's premier live jazz venue, The Orbit, which is turning 2 years old this week, is owner and partner Aymeric, jazz reviewer, critic and broadcaster Brenda Sisane, and of course jazz musician Steve. To see the lineup for what's left of the week-long second-year anniversary of the Braamfontein-based venue, you can visit www.theorbit.co.za. Time now for another ad break, but don't go anywhere.